It's been a long time coming, so let's just cut to the chase and go into detail about this upcoming circle jerk. What is War of the Worthless? War of the Worthless is an online tournament hosted on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Percy in which 32 lucky participants will compete using decks made around each archetype reviewed in the Legacy of the Worthless series, excluding worms. This means you can build a deck made around one of the following archetypes: Mechlord, Arcana Force, Nordic, Ally of Justice, Genex, Neospatians, Viacroids, Amazoness, Dark Scorpions, Venom, BES, Reptilian, Reactors, Phantom Beasts, Flamewell, and Guardians. Mind you, one very important thing to note is that the archetypal support you're allowed to use is limited to cards showcased in the reviews of each archetype, meaning BES is not allowed to run Z-Loss, as tragic of a loss as that is, and as much as it will eliminate a potential BES player base in the tournament. If any other support card comes out for one of said archetypes in the time between this video and the tournament, well, you're not allowed to use that either. Another question that pops up is, why no worms? Well, because the review of worms was poorly researched and thought out, me having not realized the deck tops several times during the 6 Samurai format as I was out of the game at the time. By all means, their consistency and versatility, especially with Meteorite, are way too good for Legacy of the Worthless standards, therefore they're disqualified for being overqualified. What kind of deck is one allowed to build? The deck you're using has to be as representative of the playstyle of the archetype it's based on as possible, therefore there are certain rules you'll have to follow. First of all, when it comes to the larger archetypes, one reviewed outside of the triple feature videos, your main deck will have to consist of at least 16 archetypal cards, with the rest of the deck mostly being built around synergizing with those cards, while the smaller archetypes are allowed to run less cards than that, but preferably as many as possible, but again, the rest of the deck will have to complement the purpose of the archetypal cards being ran. And please do try to not make them too back row heavy. Adding on to that, the win condition of your deck is going to need to be based on the one of the archetype you're using. For instance, most of these decks are based around simple beatdown, but something like Phantom Knight Nordics, which is just a rank 3 build, meaning it's as far from the Nordic playstyle as it gets, or a Fire Fist deck that just so happens to run a few Phantom Beast monsters, is not allowed. Other examples of build abuse would include a Neospatian deck focused exclusively around Omni heroes, a Mechlord deck based mainly around Granel, a Guardian deck not running any Guardians other than Iados and Redsight, a Flamewell deck based only on Firedog and Magician. You get the gist. You need to represent your archetype as thoroughly as possible without turning it into a mediocre engine for a completely different deck. Mind you, this doesn't mean you cannot run some modern text to boost your consistency or power output, as long as you're adhering to the archetype's original playstyle. For example, here's a Dark Scorpion build capable of rank 4 plays, but not primarily focused around those, instead going for their standard battle damage style, and here's an unfortunate BES deck trying to function without a field spell. And speaking of things you can't run, the third rule is that you'll be following the current TCG ban list, with OCG cards being allowed, but with some alterations for the purpose of eliminating the threat of dangerously splashable text which would completely shit on most of these archetypes. Banned cards include Raigeki, every single Kaiju, Drowning and Quaking Mirror Force, Floodgate Trap Hole, Aleister the Invoker, Utopia the Lightning, Zoodiacs in general, just all of them, Card of Demise, Elder Entity Norden, and Dimensional Barrier, while the limited cards include Ties of the Brethren, Dark Hole, and Solemn Strike. Most of these should be pretty obvious in the context of these decks being horribly vulnerable to many of these cards, and matchups would often get decided by top decking if they were left in. How will the signups work? You simply need to send an email to waroftheworthless@gmail.com, that's waroftheworthless@gmail.com, putting the name of the archetype you want to represent in the title and attaching a picture or a text file of your main, extra deck and side deck, which will then be reviewed for eligibility, after which you'll be informed if you can potentially participate or if you need to make any alterations to your deck. After a month, the signups are closed and 2 lucky contestants for each archetype are randomly picked out to represent it in the tournament. I wish the randomness factor didn't have to play such a major part in this, but given the fact that the turnout might be overwhelmingly huge, there was no easier way to do this. After the signups close, the lucky participants will get an invite to a private Discord server, which will in turn make managing matchups a lot easier since the players will be able to contact each other more directly. The matches will play out in a best of 3 format, and the tournament will be based on double elimination, meaning an archetype that loses once has a chance to come back to the top in the losers bracket, but the person playing the archetype in the losers bracket is going to be the second chosen participant with his own deck, taking up the previous player's legacy, as it were. Naturally, in the primary bracket there's gonna be a deck which won't lose a single time, making the second participant unable to duel in the losers bracket, but to make up for this, said participant will be able to face the overall winner in a mirror match as a ceremonial battle to close off the tournament. Some matches might be streamed online provided I'm awake during that period, but the war itself will be documented on YouTube with a series of commentated replays, with one video covering the primary bracket, the second video covering the losers bracket, and the final one covering the final showdown as well as the mirror match between the winner and the remaining player. What are the prizes? The first place prize is a public apology from rank 10 for calling your deck worthless, as well as a digital pat on the back and a lifetime supply of livestock scrubbing lens chargers. Jokes aside, the fact that this tournament is so inherently unbalanced would make the possibility of any real substantial reward a bit unfair to the users of obviously weaker decks. If I happen to feel it's fitting, I'll send the winner a shitty signed card which they would never think of using in their entire life, as a way to appropriately top off the series. And that should cover all the info, I think. So now, go ahead and construct your builds, equip all the lucky horseshoes and 4-leaf clovers you can find, and prepare to fail miserably because you're playing Arcana 4's Beatdown. The sign-ups close on the 7th of February. Good luck, Godspeed, and do turn left and right when you're crossing the street, because you might get hit by a car and that's actually illegal and frowned upon in most states. Bye.